Currently writing an article about Dokdo and why the name EC is important, because many foreigners don't really understand about it.
어디에다가 보내는 거예요?
This will go on the website that I'm creating. 안녕하세요. 저는 영국에서 온 24살 가즈라고 합니다. It was when I was studying abroad in Japan. I was in an area that had a lot of Korean international students as well. So because we all stayed in the same dormitory, a lot of my friends were Koreans. And after a while I wanted to understand more about them and their culture, because I was living in Japan, I was understanding Japanese culture, but I wanted to know more about them. So I decided to start learning Korean and research Korean culture, and since then I just became really interested in it. I think it's the long and varied history of Korea, especially like the Shilla dynasty. Shilla that lasted for almost 1,000 years, and so much development happened during that time. And I think that's such a special charm of Korean culture, because it's quite uncommon, in my opinion. I've always been interested in older history. In any part, anything with ancient in front of it, I've been interested in. And I like seeing, especially once I understood modern Korean culture a bit more, I really like learning about the things that obviously affect the way Korean people are now, like Confucianism, Hangul, things like that. Coming from Europe, I was always told correctly that it was Europe that invented the printing press. But we were never told that without this invention from Korea, the printing press couldn't have been made. And I think most people can agree the printing press was probably the most important invention, probably of our history. And to me, that was the first thing I really learned about Korean history that shocked me. I think it's quite a shame that, at least English people don't learn the part Korea played in such an important invention. A lot of English history that we get taught is about Europe, because that's where we were mostly involved. Even though English people were in the Korean War, it doesn't really talk about it. So most English people know Korea exists, obviously, but really don't know much about it at all. So usually when I explain these things, especially these great things that we see in the modern world, like the semiconductor, things like that, people are like, oh, I just had no idea. Korea, kind of almost like, I didn't even realize Korea could do that. I didn't realize they were that developed yet. So I like to tell, every time I go home, I like to tell them about all the good things about Korean history and Korean culture, and change their minds. Thanks to maybe the Korean War and things like the Japanese imperialism, I think a lot of people think of Korea as a victim country. And therefore, when I introduce things about Korea, like its rapid economic development or its great inventions and the things it's given to the world, people kind of find it hard to believe at first, because they have this stereotype of Korea as a victim. So that's kind of hard to begin with. But I'm gonna try hard, so. So at the moment I'm interning at a company called VANK, which is the Voluntary Agency Network of Korea, who promote Korea in English and other languages. But specifically they try and promote the correct history, because a lot of the times in English the history is just slightly incorrectly represented. Sometimes in history books one of the biggest things that comes up very often is history books will say that Korea was part of the Chinese Empire or the Mongol Empire, when in fact they had sort of this agreement. So they weren't officially part of the empire, but a lot of history books will just omit that or say that Korea was part of the empire, or they moved the Korean border. And it's just that kind of thing that doesn't necessarily seem like a huge problem, but it is because it's incorrect history. So we try and change those kind of things by writing emails. And I'd quite like to work in the field of international relations and try and sort of, that's fine, we don't need to become more like one another. But I think if we could understand each other more and therefore not misunderstand each other if somebody does something that maybe one person thinks rude, I think that in the future we can have this really harmonious relationship where we accept our differences and embrace our similarities. So I'd like to be somebody who contributes to that in the future.
Cousin like, you think?
Oh, she's so nice. She usually tells a lot of jokes that they are so funny. I like her. She's the best. She's the best.
영국에 대해서 저는 이제 약간 선입견이 있었는데요. 영국은 제국주의 국가였고 또 본인들 나라에 대한 자부심이 되게 많은 나라이기 때문에 이제 아시아의 한국에 대해서 약간의 편견이 있지 않을까 생각했는데, 카지 같은 경우에는 그런 편견 없이 한국에 대해서 매우 자세히 또 제대로 알고 있었던 것 같아요.
나만 아는 한국은 긴 역사 가진